Hey guys, tonight we sail back in time, to when the oceans were cruel, the rum was warm, and impressing someone meant hauling a spiky, tropical fruit halfway across the world without letting it rot. You're standing on the slick, swaying deck of a 19th century merchant ship. Salt stings your nostrils. Your boots are soaked. A gull squawks somewhere overhead. In your hands, a pineapple. Not a coconut, not a bottle of cologne, an honest-to-goodness pineapple. It's your prize, your secret weapon. Not for eating, oh no. This fruit is your ticket to turning heads when you step back on land. And you probably won't survive this. The odds of drowning, getting scurvy, or accidentally falling asleep too close to the gunpowder stores are all disturbingly high. But you're not thinking about that right now. You're thinking about her. That lady with the gloves and the parasol and the smile that says, "Wow, is that a pineapple?" So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a sailor in the 1800s. Life is mostly bruises and brine. The food is bland, the pay is worse, and there's always someone snoring in the hammock above you. But today, there's a bounce in your step, because you're holding something rare, ridiculous, and totally impractical, a pineapple. It's slightly bruised from the voyage, and it smells faintly like sunshine and fermentation. But you don't care. You cradle it like a newborn. It's more than a fruit. It's a conversation starter, a social signal, a glamorous gamble. Back in the tropics, pineapples are just fruit. Sweet, tangy, a little pokey. But here, after months at sea, your pineapple has taken on an aura of absurd majesty. You feel the eyes of your shipmates linger with a mix of envy and curiosity. "He's bringing it ashore," they whisper. "He's gonna try the pineapple trick." They say it with half admiration, half mockery. The pineapple trick isn't officially in any maritime manual. But it's known. If you've got one when you land, and you flash it just right, tucked under your arm, maybe polished a little with your sleeve, you might just catch a lady's gaze before a richer man does. Sure, she might also laugh, or walk away, or ask if it's for sale. But still, it's a chance. And you'll take it. You squint toward the shoreline. A town waits beyond the docks, whitewashed cottages, chimneys puffing, and a smattering of curious locals who come out to see what the sea has spat up this time. You imagine striding into town, pineapple under one arm, your other hand loosening the collar of your salt-crusted shirt. Perhaps you'll lean on a fence, casually pretending not to notice when someone says, "Is that a pineapple?" Of course, the fruit didn't start its European fame journey with sailors. No, that tale began long before, in the hands of kings and botanists who treated pineapples like rare animals, or magical totems. Back in the 17th century, the pineapple was basically a celebrity. When it first appeared in Europe, people gasped. They didn't just want to eat it, they wanted to paint it, display it, worship it from behind glass. Louis XIV allegedly grew them in hothouses and posed with them like trophies. Historians still argue whether he ever ate one or just liked the idea of being the kind of man who could. You shift your grip on the fruit. It's heavier than it looks. And you're pretty sure something squished a little when you leaned on the rail earlier. Great. Moldy spots aren't seductive. But hey, she won't notice if you angle it right. Maybe if the sun hits the yellow just so, it'll look regal. Down below, someone's humming. Maybe it's O'Leary, your bunkmate who once used dried sea biscuits to clean his teeth. He thinks the pineapple plan is doomed. He says, "If they don't fall for my accordion playing, they won't fall for your fruit." But you don't need everyone to fall. Just one. And sure, there are other tokens you could offer: carved wood, pressed flowers, a mildly horrifying seashell necklace. But the pineapple has prestige. It whispers wealth. Never mind that you're paid in copper coins and bruises. The pineapple suggests you move in grander circles. Of course, there's a risk. Some ladies, especially the sharp-eyed ones, might know the pineapple game by now. They've seen sailors wave them around like court jesters with golden apples. They might smile, curtsy, and ask, "Is it ripe?" just to see you squirm. One friend of yours, Jenkins, swears a woman took his pineapple and never spoke to him again. Another says his ended up rolled down a hill by laughing children. Still, for every failed fruit flirtation, there's a whispered tale of a woman who swooned, a dinner shared, a letter exchanged. The ship creaks. Your pineapple rolls slightly in your arm. You grip it tighter, scanning the horizon. Land's drawing closer. The town isn't grand, but it's got potential: pubs, parks, people not covered in barnacle dust. You rehearse your smile, the one that says, "Yes, this is mine, and yes, you may ask about it." Someone behind you coughs. "Better hope she likes fruit, mate," the voice says. You don't turn. You're busy imagining the moment. The street. The glance. The sparkle of interest. And maybe, if the wind is kind and your boots don't squeak too much, a conversation. Maybe even tea. With real sugar. You wonder if it'll work this time. The fruit is a little lopsided. But it smells like ambition. And hope. And sticky fingers. It's all you've got. And you're going to try. You finally step off the ship. The dock groans beneath your boots, and you feel solid earth under your feet for the first time in months. It sways a bit, your brain still insists the world should move like the ocean. You adjust the pineapple in your grip. Its green crown tickles your elbow, and the golden scales gleam under the early sun like burnished armor. You keep your chin up. No one respects a sailor who hunches while holding a pineapple. The locals barely glance at the other crewmen, but they glance at you. More precisely, at what you're carrying. A little girl tugs her mother's sleeve. "Mama, what's that?" The mother lowers her voice. "A pineapple, darling. From far away." And just like that, the fruit does the talking. You walk through narrow cobblestone streets, past laundry lines and fishmongers and windows just beginning to open. The pineapple radiates importance. Not because it's rare here, but because it used to be. And that glow hasn't quite faded. Back in the 1600s and 1700s, when pineapples first made their way from the New World to Europe, they caused a minor aristocratic meltdown. In royal courts, one didn't just serve pineapple, one presented it. Covered dishes would be lifted with a flourish to reveal a single slice, as though unveiling a Faberge egg. At one point, a single pineapple could be worth the equivalent of several months' wages. Eating it was almost beside the point. It was like buying a sports car just to park it where people could see it. England, especially, lost its collective mind. Greenhouses were built specifically to house the tropical guests. Historians still argue whether the pineries of noble estates ever grew pineapples fast enough to justify the cost, or whether they just acted as leafy trophies. Either way, it didn't matter, the idea that someone had a pineapple was enough. You didn't have to taste it. You just had to be seen with it. You, right now, are part of that tradition. Minus the velvet robes and powdered wigs. And here's the kicker, you're not rich, not titled, and definitely not part of polite society. But with this one slightly dented, sun-warmed fruit in your arm, you've just crashed that velvet rope. A woman walks by with a market basket and does a double take. She doesn't stop, but her glance lingers. That's one glance more than you got the last 3 times you came ashore. You turn a corner and find a public garden, a patch of green surrounded by wrought iron fencing, with benches and bird baths and just enough breeze to keep your sleeves billowing. You settle onto a bench and place the pineapple beside you, its spiky top catching the light like a tiny crown. A boy sits on the next bench over and whispers to his friend, "Bet he's a captain." You are not a captain. You once pretended to be one when a tavern wench asked, but that ended in embarrassment and a sudden sprint away from an actual officer. Still, the fruit confers a kind of authority. Not naval, but social. You remember a story told by old Marston, a gunner with a voice like gravel and a face like spoiled bread. He swore he once entered a ball in London by simply walking in with a pineapple tucked under his arm and nodding as if he belonged. Nobody asked who I was, he said. They asked where I got it. Of course, the pineapple's rise to fame didn't happen by accident. It had help, painters, writers, decorators, all hungry for a symbol of exotic luxury. The fruit began appearing on wallpaper, embroidered into dresses, even perched atop gateposts of grand estates. Want to say, I'm cultured, connected, and probably own a globe? Put a pineapple on it. It's a little absurd. It's a fruit. It doesn't sing. It doesn't fight. It doesn't even last that long without growing mold. But for a glorious century or so, it was the Mona Lisa of groceries. And now, it's yours. You watch as a woman with a green parasol strolls past. She slows. Her eyes flick down. She tilts her head. Is that fresh? She asks. You clear your throat. Picked it myself. Caribbean sun. Didn't let it touch the deck once. She laughs, just once. Not unkindly. I hear they're sweet when eaten warm. Ever tried? No, you say. Too beautiful to cut. She nods. Shame, really. Maybe next time. She walks away. Not a proposal, not even a flirtation. But acknowledgement. You're not invisible. You're the man with the pineapple. Your fruit may not be royal, but it carries royalty's aura. And that aura has power. Even if the days of kings posing with them are mostly gone, the glamour lingers like the scent of rum in old oak. Quirky side note, in some parts of Scotland during the pineapple craze, people built actual pineapple-shaped structures, like the Dunmore pineapple, a giant stone monument shaped like the fruit. Why? Historians still argue whether it was serious architecture or an elaborate joke. Either way, someone once looked at a pineapple and thought, yes, let's live under that. You lean back, resting your shoulders against the bench. The town hums around you. Your fingers trace the textured skin of your prized possession. It's starting to soften. Maybe a day or two left before the decline begins. But that's all right. Today, it still works. It still speaks. And you? You're just getting started. Your fingers drum against the pineapple's spiky skin as you sit there, basking in the moment. The way it caught her eye, it worked. Even if just for a blink. That green parasol is now just a speck past the hedgerow, but your chest still holds the puff of pride. Not bad for a bruised tropical fruit smuggled through months of storm, salt, and the occasional rat trying to nibble it. Now, the real challenge begins, keeping it alive. Pineapples aren't exactly built for long-term travel. They bruise, ferment, and start leaking sticky sadness if you're not careful. And yet here you are, cradling it like a golden retriever puppy. No, more than that. Puppies can at least whimper when they're unhappy. Pineapples just die quietly. Back on the ship, sailors would invent little rituals to keep theirs fresh. Jenkins used to wrap his in his undershirt and stow it in a lantern box. O'Leary swore by whispering compliments to his every morning. You don't do anything that weird, but you have started turning yours a little each hour, letting it sun evenly, as if it's tanning before a debutante ball. And this isn't just vanity, it's strategy. A pineapple at peak ripeness isn't just aromatic, it glows. It seems almost lit from within, like it's just returned from an all-inclusive island vacation. If you can get it to hold that glow for one more evening, maybe even show it off at the tavern, who knows what doors it might open. You remember your last shore leave, no pineapple, just salt on your sleeves and a limp piece of jerky in your pocket. No one looked twice. This time, you've got a portable status symbol. The tavern is only a few streets away, tucked behind a bakery and a candle shop. You pass it now and breathe deep, the heavy scent of flour and flame, yeast and sugar. It almost distracts you from the moment you notice your pineapple is squishier. Not alarming, but noticeable. You slow your pace. You need a plan. What you need is somewhere cool and dry. Not a windowsill. Not a barrel. Definitely not your pocket. You scan the buildings around you, and that's when you spot it, a tailor's shop. The window is filled with bolts of linen and a mannequin with suspiciously chiseled cheekbones. The shop door is cracked open, and a bell jingles as you step inside. The tailor, a thin man with thread trailing from his sleeves, looks up. His eyes lock immediately onto your arm. "I haven't seen one of those in a while," he says, not bothering to hide his curiosity. You nod solemnly, adjusting your grip. She's still ripening. Needs a place to breathe. He tilts his head, considering. Leave it on that velvet roll by the window. Morning light. No direct sun. That's what I used to do. Used to. There it is again, that wistful note. Pineapples were once the icon. Now, they're more of a novelty. But even novelties have power if wielded properly. You set it down gently, nestling it between folds of rich fabric. It looks oddly at home, like a king resting atop his royal cloak. The tailor nods approvingly. They used to rent them, you know. You blink. Rent pineapples. For dinner parties. Couldn't afford to buy one outright, so folks would rent a pineapple for the night to show off to their guests. Return it in the morning. Whole thing. Didn't even slice it. You chuckle. Hope they didn't keep the deposit. He grins. Depends how many people poked it. You file that away, a reminder of just how absurd things used to be. Historians still argue whether pineapple rental was a widespread practice or just an urban legend boosted by satirical cartoons. But either way, it sounds true, and that's half the battle in history. As the tailor works on hemming a pair of trousers, you linger near your pineapple. Occasionally, someone passing the shop window pauses. You pretend not to notice, casually adjusting the angle of the fruit to show its best side. It's like stage managing a very small, spiny celebrity. You reflect on the journey it took to get here, not just yours, but its. These fruits didn't grow themselves. On plantations across the Caribbean and Central America, pineapples were coaxed from the soil by hands darkened from sun and labor. It's easy to romanticize the fruit's journey when you don't have to pick it. And that uncomfortable truth still clings to every sweet slice. The pineapple may have been a status symbol, but it rode in on the backs of empire and sweat. The tailor eventually finishes his work and hands you back the fruit, now ever so slightly cooler, its surface dry. It smells sweeter now, like it's finally ready. You nod your thanks and head back out, the tavern calling like a siren. This will be the big moment, the debut. Inside, the air is thick with pipe smoke and exaggerated stories. A man at the bar insists he once fought off a giant squid using only a spoon. Another claims to have married a mermaid. No one believes either, but they all listen. You step through the door and instantly feel the eyes. Your pineapple is glowing, metaphorically at least. You don't need to shout. You just lean against the bar, order something dark and warm, and casually place the fruit in full view. The bartender pauses mid-pour. Now that, he says, is either a fine dessert or a bold statement. Hopefully both, you reply, sipping slowly. Conversation shifts. People sidle closer. One woman in a red ribbon asks, "Did you bring that all the way from Havana?" You nod. Not exactly true. Not exactly false. It's beautiful, she says, reaching to touch the leaves. You let her. She doesn't flinch. For the next hour, you don't talk about storms or rations or how Jenkins snored through a cannon drill. You talk about fruit. About taste and texture and far-off places. The pineapple has become your wingman. And as the tavern glows with laughter and the fruit glows with ripeness, you lean back, pleased. Tonight, the gamble paid off. The pineapple is still in one piece the next morning, barely. You wake in a room above the tavern, the kind with slanted ceilings and a window too small for comfort but perfect for sunrise. Your head throbs, not from drink, just from all the attention. The kind of social hangover that creeps in after being noticed more in one night than in the last 6 months combined. The pineapple sits on the table, catching light. Its one sturdy crown droops just slightly, and the scent in the room is sweeter than it was the night before. Fermentation is whispering. You stretch, then shuffle over, checking its underside. Soft. Not ruined, but not the firm beauty it was at sea. The question presses down like your boots on a gangplank, what now? This is where most sailors falter. Do you eat it? Give it away. Toss it ceremonially into the sea like a fruit Viking funeral. No one tells you how to retire a pineapple. But you've heard stories. Old Tobias from Portsmouth once preserved his in rum for 2 years, though no one could confirm whether it still tasted like pineapple or just sadness. Another sailor claimed to have pressed slices into letters home, like floral perfume notes, sweet until the juice leaked through the envelopes. You pace a little. The town is already waking. You hear a cartwheel groan, a rooster complain, and a milkmaid whistle. This pineapple has 1 day left of glory, tops. So you decide, it's time for a farewell tour. You wrap it gently in a handkerchief, navy blue with a stitched anchor, the kind someone gives you when they're pretending to miss you, and step into the street. This time, you're not looking to impress. You're looking to share. The town square is bustling already. Market stalls bloom like canvas flowers, spilling oranges, onions, and crusty bread. Children dart between legs. You wander toward a familiar stall, the same bakery you passed yesterday. The baker spots you and chuckles. Still lugging that tropical beast around? You grin. Figured someone should get a taste. She raises an eyebrow. You mean to cut it? You nod. Might even share. And just like that, she clears a little space on the table, wipes down a wooden board, and hands you a bread knife, clearly not designed for tropical fruit, but good enough. The blade bites into the skin with a crunch, and a wave of aroma rolls out, honey, citrus, warmth. Heads turn. Now, here's the thing, most people you meet have seen pineapples in wallpaper or carved onto bedposts. But few have tasted a fresh one, especially not cut open in public, especially not for free. Slices go out like blessings. One to the baker. One to a boy standing nearby. One to a curious vendor who had been pretending not to stare. Everyone's reaction is the same, surprise, followed by an almost comical widening of the eyes. Sweetness can be a revelation. You hand out pieces like a benevolent sea wizard. And you make sure to take a piece for yourself, of course. It's warm. It's soft. It's perfect. One bite and the months at sea are worth it. Not because of the flavor, but because of how it hits your tongue and reminds you of where you've been. It's salty breeze and deck wood and sweaty palms. It's the sound of sails flapping and your captain cursing in 3 languages. It's the full absurdity of guarding a fruit-like treasure, only to devour it in a crowded square with jam on your lip. The crowd thins, eventually. The baker thanks you with a still warm roll, tucked in paper. You nod and tuck what's left of the pineapple, just a few scraggly wedges, into a cloth and wander back toward the docks. On the way, you pass a small antique shop, more cluttered closet than storefront. Something about the place draws you in. Inside, it's chaos. Shelves sag under the weight of teacups, broken clocks, maps with the corners kissed off. You nod to the shopkeeper, who waves absently, too busy arguing with a cat about the placement of a candle. And then you see it, tucked in the back, on a dusty shelf, a porcelain pineapple. About the size of a fist, ivory-toned with faded gold highlights. Decorative. Pointless. Glorious. You pick it up gently. It's heavier than it looks. Those used to be wedding gifts, the shopkeeper says behind you, appearing as if summoned. Symbol of hospitality, you see. Welcome, abundance, all that rot. You turn it in your hand. Still smells like dust. He laughs. Well, it's got character. Like you, sailor. You consider buying it, keeping a reminder of this whole fruity adventure. But then you realize, you don't need a fake pineapple to remember this. You lived it. Plus, you've got juice on your sleeve and the faint admiration of half the town. That's better than any trinket. Instead, you leave behind one of the last slices on his counter with a wink. Trade. He shrugs. Best deal I've had today. And as you leave, the bell above the door jingles, and a breeze lifts the curtain. Historically, the pineapple's symbolism outlived its novelty. Even as it became more accessible, canned, sliced, printed on beach towels, it retained a certain mystique. Historians still argue whether this was marketing brilliance or pure cultural inertia. But either way, it worked. The fruit that once bankrupted aristocrats now decorates bathroom wallpaper in Cincinnati. You find yourself on a bench again, maybe the same one, maybe not. The town looks different now, slower. Less like a place to impress, more like a place to exhale. Your fingers are sticky. Your sleeves are stained. And your pineapple is gone. But you don't feel empty. Instead, you feel something better. Like you've been part of a quiet legacy. One spiked fruit at a time. And who knows, maybe next voyage, you'll smuggle two. You head back toward the docks, no pineapple in hand this time, just the memory of it clinging to your clothes like salt in your cuffs. The ship is still there, tethered, yawning, half unloaded. A few crewmates give you knowing glances. One raises an eyebrow as if to say, well, did it work? You respond with a modest shrug, but inside you're grinning like a man who's just smuggled gold past customs. The pineapple's legacy has now shifted, from object to story. And you're ready to wield that story like a sword, or at least like a well-worn anecdote in a tavern where the beer's cheap and the lies run long. You know what's coming next, the inevitable retellings. So then what happened? Did she touch it? Did you eat it all yourself, you greedy fruit mongrel? And you're ready for all of it. But first, you've got some cargo to haul. You rejoin the others moving crates of sugar, barrels of molasses, sacks of questionable flour. It's repetitive, sure, but comforting in that mindless, back-breaking way. As you lift, sweat, and squint through sun and gulls, you start to hear pieces of your pineapple tail floating in the air. Swear to Neptune, he cut it up in the market. Gave it to kids like he was Saint Pineapple. You don't interrupt. You just let the myth grow its legs. By evening, it's reached full absurdity. Jenkins claims he saw someone offer you a horse for the last slice. O'Leary insists the mayor tried to knight you with a baguette. You correct none of it. That's the beauty of sailor lore, it doesn't need truth. It just needs seasoning. You settle down for a mug of something dark and warm, your back sore in the good way. Someone started a sea shanty in the corner, and it's bad, really bad, but the rhythm's decent. A young lad, barely old enough to shave, sidles up beside you. His shirt's too big, his belt too loose, and his eyes wide. Is it true you carried a pineapple all the way from the Indies just to impress a girl? You take a slow sip. Sort of, you say. It was more about the principle. He nods like he understands, though you doubt it. Then he adds, I heard rich folks used to carve them into the tops of their gates. To show off. That they had fruit? No. That they had guests. He grins. It meant, like, hospitality. You blink. This one's actually true. Pineapples on gates, pineapples on dinner plates, pineapples embroidered into the wallpaper of people who had never seen the ocean. It was all a message, look at me. I've seen the world. I have access. Historians still argue, you mutter. About what? Whether it was a real tradition, or just some colonial spin to justify their wallpaper choices. He squints. What's colonial? You pat his shoulder. Ask me again after you've seen 3 ports, lad. You finish your drink and lean back against the dock post. Your shirt is still damp at the collar, and there's a hint of sea in the breeze. The tavern windows glow with yellow light, and you can hear a burst of laughter from inside. Someone's probably reenacting your heroic fruit dissection, complete with pineapple stabbing sounds. And for a moment, you think about how strange it is, how one fruit can become a mirror. It reflects who you want to be. What you want others to see. For you, it was about being noticed. For the aristocrats, it was about being envied. For sailors now, it's something simpler. It's about a moment. The moment the fruit hits the table, and the room goes quiet. The moment the girl in the green parasol pauses, just long enough. The moment when sweetness, status, and salt all collide. You reach into your pocket and pull out the wrinkled handkerchief you'd wrapped the pineapple in. You hold it up to your nose. Still a faint hint of juice, sun-warm and sugary. You could probably wash it, but you won't. Not yet. Because here's the thing, pineapples weren't just trophies. They were conversation starters. Class indicators. Exotic symbols repurposed for pride, charm, and flirtation. In the 1800s, showing one off at a party meant you were someone. Even if you had to rent it. And sailors? Well, they weren't exactly buying wallpaper. They brought back what they could. Seeds. Spices. Wounds. Rum. And if they were lucky, just one, pineapple. The next day, your captain calls for a cargo inspection. You line up with the others, boots dusted, faces neutral. He walks the line, eyes sharp. Stops in front of you. I heard, he says, voice low, you fed an entire market on a single pineapple. You blink. Word gets around. He nods once. Then, keep feeding them stories. Makes my ship look important. And that's it. He moves on. You exhale, shoulders dropping a little. Not scolded. Not praised. Just, acknowledged. That, from the captain, is practically a medal. That night, you find a scrap of parchment and a stub of charcoal. You start sketching, badly, a pineapple. The shape's wrong. The texture's a mess. But it looks like yours, and that's what matters. You tack it above your bunk. You drift off with the sound of creaking ropes and soft snores. And as sleep pulls you under, you dream, not of storms or charts or grog, but of golden skin, green crowns, and the way a fruit once made you feel like the most interesting man on the pier. You dream, oddly enough, of pineapples in powdered wigs. It's ridiculous, high society ladies with fruit hats, gentlemen bowing low before a pineapple perched on a velvet pillow like it's royalty. Even the footmen in your dreams seem to be balancing platters of the stuff, slicing it with golden knives, offering it like communion. When you wake, it's still dark, but the ship creaks beneath you, and the scent of the ocean reminds you where you are. The pineapple's long gone, but the weight of its story is settling into something more permanent. You climb up to the deck for air. The sky's pale, smeared with early blue and threads of mist. Someone's whistling softly near the prow. You stretch, exhale, and lean against the rail. Here's the thing you've come to realize, back in the 19th century, pineapples weren't just food, they were full-blown celebrities. You weren't just bringing one home, you were bringing back a conversation. Something to elevate a dinner, a ball, even a wedding. In London, for example, wealthy hosts would place an untouched pineapple at the center of a banquet table, not to eat it, mind you, but to signal just how fabulous they were. It was like saying, I know a guy. Who knows a guy? Who bribed a guy? Who got this from Jamaica? And sometimes, absurdly, people would rent pineapples. Yes. Rent them. The same fruit would be passed around event after event, aging like a debutante well past her season, slowly softening in a series of public appearances before finally being consumed, if it hadn't gone fully squishy by then. Historians still argue whether this was more common among the merchant class or purely an aristocratic trend, but there's consensus on one point: pineapples had power. Social power. Status power. Instagram before there was Instagram power. You lean on the railing, imagining yourself back then, but instead of dockside, you're in a drawing room. Tall windows. Chintz curtains. 100 forks waiting. And at the center, your pineapple. It's like watching someone casually place a Faberge egg on a cheese board. You'd sit nearby, pretending not to stare, knowing full well everyone else was watching too. One man might murmur, remarkable symmetry, while a woman might fan herself and whisper, do you think it's real? It wasn't just fruit. It was theater. You shift, letting the sea air clear your head. And it occurs to you that in this golden age of pineapples, what really made them so alluring wasn't just scarcity, it was the tension. That visible battle between display and consumption. Everyone wanted to eat the pineapple, but no one dared touch it. At least, not until the host gave permission. And when that moment came, when the knife finally descended, people watched in reverent silence, like monks at a ritual. The slices were passed around in delicate porcelain dishes. Just one bite was enough to confirm, yes, this was real. Yes, this was worth the wait. And yes, the host had just elevated themselves one tier higher in the unspoken hierarchy of society. The joke, of course, was that most people had no idea what pineapple even tasted like. For many, it was sourer than expected. The texture was strange. The juice dribbled in ways not suited to silk. But still, they swooned. You shake your head at the absurdity. Still, you understand it. It's the same feeling you had, standing in that market square. That mixture of pride, performance, and the unmistakable realization that, just for a moment, you were the center of something larger. Back in the hold, Jenkins is snoring with the abandon of a man who's stolen someone else's blanket. You kick his boot on your way past. He grunts but doesn't wake. You fish out your crumpled charcoal sketch and stare at it. It's ugly. It looks more like a turnip than a pineapple. But it's yours. You're about to toss it when you notice something. Someone's added a little mustache to it. Inked, curled at the ends, very dashing. Jenkins, probably. Or O'Leary. Maybe the ship's cat. But somehow, it fits. You tuck it back up and crawl into your bunk. As you drift again, your thoughts wander to those rented pineapples, passed from party to party. Were they labeled? Did they get names? Was there one infamous fruit that made the rounds for an entire season, like a celebrity guest no one could quite get rid of? You imagine a pineapple named Reginald. Worn but dignified. Passed from dinner to gala to opera box, until someone finally couldn't resist and ate him. Poor Reginald. Taken in his prime. The next day, you find yourself writing. Not letters. Not logs. Just thoughts. Maybe a ballad. Maybe a joke. Maybe a eulogy to Reginald, the most beloved pineapple in the British Empire. It's not great poetry. You rhyme fruit with salute, and it goes downhill from there. But it's something. It's the start of something new. Because you're no longer just a sailor who once carried a pineapple. You're the sailor who understood it. Who shared it. Who saw what it could mean. And maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one who's felt it. Maybe, right now, across the Atlantic, another sailor's unwrapping his own prickly prize. Maybe he's got a girl in mind. Maybe he's just showing off. Or maybe, like you, he just wants to feel that quiet thrill again. And maybe he's humming a tune. Something you made up. Something about Reginald. Because stories are like pineapples, aren't they? You carry them, you guard them, you offer them up when the moment's right. And if you're lucky, they're sweet. You're stitching a song together in your head as you scrape barnacles off the hull. A slow, awkward rhythm, half chant, half sea shanty, that rhymes pineapple with chapel and grapple. Jenkins tries to hum along before giving up entirely and blaming your lyrics for his splinter. But here's what's really happening beneath the work and the jokes and the aching shoulders: your relationship with pineapples has changed. It's no longer about the fruit. It's about what it unlocks. Like when you head into town that afternoon, and a vendor calls out, "Oi, fruit man." You grin. Not offended. Not even embarrassed. Because you've become part of a story, and stories, especially funny ones, tend to stick longer than your name. As you make your way through the narrow alleys, past crates of salted fish and spice, you hear someone else say, "They say he fed an orphanage with one slice." Ridiculous. You didn't even see an orphanage. But you let it go. Stories do what they want. What you didn't expect was this next part, imitation. Because it's not long before you see someone else, awkwardly, clearly, blatantly, trying to pull off a similar pineapple moment. He's standing near the fountain with a bruised one, pretending it's fresh. His coat's a bit too clean. His accent a little too upper crust for a dockhand. He's posing. And you realize something important: the pineapple has become a performance. Not just for sailors. For anyone desperate to matter, to impress, to belong in some fleeting moment of attention. Historians still argue whether these social rituals around pineapples began naturally or were orchestrated by early merchants looking to inflate prices. Was it a grassroots glamour? Or a brilliant marketing ploy in fruit form? You glance again at the poser by the fountain, whose pineapple is already starting to sag in the middle. Well, somebody is definitely cashing in. You duck into a bakery and buy a stale roll. The baker recognizes you too. "You're the pineapple lad," she says with a wink. "Next one you bring, I'll trade you a whole tray of honey biscuits." Tempting. You bite into the roll and chew slowly. It's dry. A little bitter. But you're too amused to care. It gets you thinking. Back when pineapples were still new to Europe, they weren't just rare, they were misunderstood. Some folks thought they cured disease. Others believed they were dangerous to eat during thunderstorms. One French naturalist once claimed they caused melancholy if consumed too late in the evening. Which, if you think about it, makes sense. You are sort of melancholy right now. But it's not the fruit's fault. It's the echo of the moment. The afterglow of that green parasol gaze. The knowledge that a thing so small, just a fruit, really, could hold that much weight. You head back to the docks, roll half-eaten in your hand, and watch a shipload of sailors disembark. They're loud, sunburned, laughing. One of them carries a wrapped bundle that might be a pineapple, or maybe a ham. You feel something close to pity. They haven't had your experience. They haven't lived the performance, the mischief, the sweet sloppiness of that market square day. To them, a pineapple's just a fruit. To you, it's a legacy. Still, part of you wants to warn them. Maybe even draft a little guide, how to use a pineapple without looking like a fool. Tip 1, don't brag. Let people notice. Tip 2, share it. Half the value's in the spectacle. Tip 3, be ready to let go. Pineapples are fleeting. Stories are not. But of course, you don't say any of that. You're not in the business of explaining legends. You're in the business of living them. Later that night, back on the ship, a storm creeps in. It's not fierce, just irritating, drizzle and wind and rope that creaks like it's trying to compose its own sea shanty. You huddle below deck with the others, passing time. Someone starts carving a chunk of driftwood into something vaguely pineapple-shaped. Someone else hums the tune you made up earlier, about Reginald the pineapple and his tragic final banquet. You wonder how long this will last, this pineapple fever. A season? A few ports? A lifetime? And then O'Leary nudges you with a grin. Heard someone brought a pineapple to church this morning. You blink. What for? Didn't say. Just placed it on the altar like it belonged there. Like an offering. Like a guest of honor. You snort. It's absurd. But also kind of fitting. Because that's what pineapples had become, hadn't they? More than fruit. They were symbols. Of luxury. Of worldliness. Of curiosity. And yes, of trying very, very hard to look impressive without seeming like you were trying at all. They were the original influencers. Back in the hold, you sketch another fruit, this time, from memory. It's still terrible, but you're improving. You add legs this time. And a monocle. Jenkins claps when he sees it. That's Sir Reginald to you, he says. You laugh and close your eyes. The ship rocks gently. The storm hums outside. And in your mind, there's a pineapple sitting in a velvet chair, nodding graciously as high society clinks glasses and whispers behind gloved hands. You know it's ridiculous. But also a little bit beautiful. Because in a world full of hardship, scurvy, and long nights, the idea that a single fruit could cause so much fuss, could carry so much meaning, feels like a kind of magic. And maybe that's what you're really chasing. Not the fruit. Not the girl. Not even the story. Just a little piece of that old, golden world magic. You wake up to sunlight slicing through a crack in the hull, sharp, gold-edged, and far too early. Your back protests, your head feels like it's packed in wool, and Jenkins is muttering something about ghost pineapples in his sleep. You swing your legs off the bunk, boots thudding onto damp boards, and stretch until your spine sounds like a crate of dry sticks being stepped on. Another day, another unpredictable port ahead. But now, you carry something the others don't, the experience of being at the center of pineapple-powered social theater. As you help unload crates and lash down barrels, your mind drifts. You think of pineapples on altars, pineapples in wigs, pineapples on rented tour schedules. You think about how, in some elite circles, the fruit had become a metaphor, abundance, empire, even divine right to impress the neighbors. Back in Georgian and Victorian Britain, people didn't just show off pineapples, they built their homes around the idea of them. You've heard the rumors of orangeries and greenhouses devoted entirely to growing pineapples in climates far too cold and miserable to allow it naturally. And one house in Scotland had a literal stone pineapple dome. Massive. Ornamental. Designed in the 1760s by a man named John Murray, 4th Earl of Dunmore. Historians still argue whether it was purely decorative or also meant as an imperial brag, a silent, "I've seen the tropics, and you haven't," to anyone passing by. You imagine him standing under his pineapple dome, sipping weak tea and smirking. There's a madness to it all. The expense. The obsession. The fruit that demanded architecture. And it wasn't just architecture, oh no. There were wallpaper patterns, silverware motifs, embroidery, lace, and even church carvings inspired by pineapples. They showed up on tombstones. Garden gates. Family crests. As if everyone collectively agreed, yes, this sharp, spiky tropical explosion. This is who we are now. Which, in a way, they had. You tie off the last rope and head into town. This one's dusty, sun-baked, and full of flies. But it also has a market, and you can smell sugar and citrus in the air, that faint promise of sweetness. You half expect to see another pineapple. And sure enough, there it is. 1. Singular. Under glass, like a holy relic. The vendor guarding it is stout, sun-reddened, and absolutely not in the mood for haggling. No samples, he says before you even open your mouth. And if you touch it, I'll charge you. You nod respectfully. That's fair. This isn't fruit. It's theater again. A woman beside you sighs dreamily. They say Cleopatra used to bathe in pineapple juice. She's wrong, obviously. It would have been milk, or maybe wine, but you don't correct her. The myth is better than the truth. You stroll on, watching the pineapple from the corner of your eye like it might jump up and start reciting poetry. And part of you wonders, how did this all start? How did a fruit native to South America end up perched like royalty on British tables? Well, the story goes back to Christopher Columbus, of course. He first encountered pineapples in Guadeloupe in 1493. Thought they were magical. Maybe even medicinal. Historians still argue whether he understood what he was eating, or whether he thought it was some kind of divine melon with a crown. Eventually, pineapples were brought back to Europe. But they didn't travel well. They rotted. Molded. Imploded in ships' holds. So growing them locally became the obsession of the wealthy. And thus began the era of pineapple pits, elaborate greenhouse systems powered by coal and manure heat, built entirely to grow 1 or 2 fruits at a time. Imagine that. You build a shed. Then a wall. Then another wall. Then a roof of angled glass and subterranean tunnels for warmth, all to grow 1 pineapple. 1. And if it made it to harvest? You didn't eat it. You named it. You took portraits with it. You passed it around at social events like a tiny, spiky celebrity. You're still thinking about this as you sit by the dock, gnawing on a boiled egg. The water is calm. The sky is heavy with late afternoon haze. A breeze kicks up, warm and salt-drenched, and you start sketching again. Not Reginald this time. Something new. A pineapple in a cradle. No, that's too weird. A pineapple on a throne. Better. You give it a scepter. Maybe a cape. You've completely lost your mind. Jenkins walks past and raises an eyebrow. You drawing fruit again? It's royalty, you say. He shrugs. Right. I'm gonna go see if that baker's got rum rolls. He leaves you to your madness. And as you draw, you realize something. You've changed. You used to think the pineapple was just a joke. A gimmick. A cheap shortcut to attention. But now, it's more than that. It's a keyhole. A glimpse into what people value: beauty, rarity, performance, status. And above all, storytelling. Because people didn't just own pineapples. They talked about them. Gossiped. Exaggerated. Told each other wild tales over tea. My cousin's butler once sniffed a pineapple and fainted. They say the Queen eats one every Tuesday. I heard a bishop baptized a baby in pineapple juice. Probably not true. But wonderful nonetheless. And isn't that what matters most? You flip the page. Start a new sketch. This time, it's a ship. But the sails are pineapples. Because why not? You're halfway through your 3rd mug of boiled cabbage soup, don't ask, when Jenkins slaps a folded broadsheet onto the crate between you. Look, he says, grinning. We're in the news. You raise an eyebrow and read the headline: The Pineapple Fad, Harmless Fun or Frivolity Run Amok. Beneath it, a crude illustration, definitely not flattering, of a sailor hoisting a pineapple triumphantly above a crowd of swooning ladies. You mutter, they didn't even get the nose right. The article rambles on about moral decline, the dangers of conspicuous consumption, and whether the lower classes should be permitted access to tropical fruit at all. It ends with the deeply serious question, what does it say about a society that its poorest men hoist fruit in place of dignity? You and Jenkins both laugh. Long and loud. Until your stomach hurts. But then, like sea fog, the laughter fades, leaving behind a vague discomfort. Because that's the thing, isn't it? The joke has layers. You didn't start this to make a point. You weren't staging a rebellion. You were just a sailor with a tropical fruit, trying to impress a girl in the market square. But now the pineapples become something else. A symbol. A lightning rod. A talking point for social columnists with too much ink and not enough salt in their lungs. Historians still argue whether the pineapple craze represented a democratization of luxury, or a desperate attempt by the working class to parody aristocratic absurdity. Some say it was satire. Others call it aspiration. You think it was just fun. Still, you can't deny what's happening. You're seeing pineapples pop up everywhere now. On brooches. On theater backdrops. Even on a bar of soap, which makes you wonder what kind of clean-smelling pirate that's meant to attract. At one point, you pass a barber's shop advertising a pineapple-scented tonic for thinning hair. The man in the chair looks worried. You don't blame him. But it's not just scent and fashion and satire. There's something weirder happening, too. People are starting to rent pineapples. Yes. Rent. There's a warehouse 2 streets down where they keep the presentation fruit. For a modest sum, usually more than a sailor makes in a week, you can borrow one for the evening. To display at a dinner party. To perch on a piano. To cradle while pretending you just returned from Havana. You don't even eat it. You just pose with it. One of the lads from your ship tried it once. Showed up at a social club in a borrowed jacket and a rented pineapple. Spoke in bad French all night and claimed he was the son of a sugar baron. 3 ladies gave him their handkerchiefs. 1 gentleman gave him a job offer. He returned the pineapple with a tip and a thank you note. You suppose it worked? This is the new reality, pineapples as props in an elaborate dance of appearance. A whole industry born not from nourishment, but from perception. It's not even about the pineapple anymore. It's about what it says about you. That you've traveled. That you've succeeded. That you're not just another face in the crowd. And perhaps, more dangerously, it says that you're trying. Because nothing is more suspect in high society than visible effort. You walk past a parlor where someone's painted a portrait of a pineapple in a waistcoat. No explanation. Just the fruit. Regal. Stoic. Surrounded by velvet drapery and an expression of quiet judgment. You whisper, Sir Reginald returns. Back on the docks, Jenkins tells you he overheard a group of merchants discussing plans to create fake pineapples, carved from wax or clay, for those who can't afford the real thing but still crave the illusion. You nod. That makes sense. Not everyone can afford to rot their finances over produce. Sooner or later, the pineapple bubble will burst. The trickle will turn to flood. More ships, more fruit, more availability. And when that happens, the pineapple won't be special anymore. It'll be common. Like bread. Or buttons. Or overcooked cabbage soup. You start to wonder how you'll feel when that day comes. Will you mourn the pineapple's fall from grace? Or will you laugh, and let it go, and find some other object to hang your hopes on? Because here's the real truth, the one no one writes about in the broadsheets or carves into soap molds. People don't want the fruit. They want the feeling. The tiny flutter of possibility when you walk into a crowded room holding something no one else has. The silence that follows as heads turn. The little smile you catch, unexpected, from someone who sees you not as you are, but as you might be. All that, from a spiky yellow fruit. It's ridiculous. And yet, profoundly human. You sit by the water as the sky fades into gold, and you think of all the things pineapples have been made to carry. Status. Mystery. Longing. Absurdity. And now, perhaps, because the world is very good at these things, controversy. Already you've heard rumors of pineapple smugglers. Gangs who steal and rebrand fruit from rival docks. Secret pineapple-themed dinners held behind locked parlor doors. Someone even mentioned a duel, yes, a duel, fought over a pineapple crate misdelivery in Bristol. The fruit is spiraling out of your hands. And maybe that's okay. You were never meant to hold it forever. Just to be a part of its story. Still, you find yourself carving a tiny pineapple shape into the edge of your bunk later that night. Just a quiet mark. Nothing fancy. A reminder. That once, before all the fuss and the fake mustaches and the rented fruit and the editorials, there was a single moment when you held something rare. And it changed the way people looked at you. Morning breaks with a salty breeze and the sharp clatter of rigging. You're on deck, staring out at the endless horizon where the sea and sky merge into a blur of blues and grays. The ship creaks and groans as it cuts through the water, carrying you further into the unknown, and further into the pineapple saga. You think about the peculiar way pineapples have become woven into the fabric of maritime culture. It's not just a fruit to show off, it's a statement, a code. To carry a pineapple aboard a ship meant you were part of a larger story, one of exploration, exoticism, and sometimes, sheer cheeky bravado. There's a rumor circulating among the crew, one you heard first from an old salt who swears he sailed with Captain Cook himself. Apparently, pineapples weren't only a symbol of hospitality or luxury, they were lucky charms against the superstitions that ruled the waves. Some sailors believed that a pineapple hung from the mast or carried below deck could ward off storms and keep sea monsters at bay. It was like a talisman, a beacon of good fortune amid the endless uncertainty of the ocean. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were widespread or confined to pockets of seafaring folk, but you've heard enough stories to be convinced. There's power in the pineapple, not just because it's rare, but because it means something. The story goes that when pirates, or privateers, as they preferred, captured a ship laden with pineapples, it was seen as a double prize, treasure from the tropics and a charm for safe passage. Some captains even kept a crate of the fruit locked away, a secret cache for when the seas turned cruel. You imagine those rough men, notorious for their ruthlessness, secretly clutching a pineapple like a child with a favorite toy. A strange thought, but comforting in its own way. Your mind drifts to the women back home, waiting on the docks or in far-flung port cities. Pineapples weren't just showpieces for sailors, they were gifts. Tokens of affection, tokens of survival. Something to prove that you'd braved the unknown and returned with a piece of it. And you know the story of how, in some ports, the arrival of a ship carrying pineapples sparked impromptu celebrations. Markets would buzz with excitement. The fruit's scent, sweet, sharp, almost intoxicating, would fill the air. Local musicians played, dancers twirled, and for a moment, the hardships of life were forgotten. Yet, not everyone was thrilled by this pineapple obsession. You've overheard merchants grumble about inflated prices, about people spending their last coins on something that didn't even fill their bellies properly. There were whispers about moral decay, about vanity run amok. One pamphlet you read last week even argued that the pineapple craze was a symptom of the empire's decline, that the British were too busy chasing frivolities while their colonies simmered with unrest. Historians still debate the pineapple's role in society. Was it a harmless fad, a clever marketing ploy, or a reflection of deeper societal anxieties? No one seems to agree, and maybe that's part of its charm. As you look out over the restless waves, the sun dipping low and casting golden trails, you feel the weight of all these stories converging. Pineapples have been much more than a fruit on these decks, they're a mirror held up to the era's hopes, fears, and dreams. Tonight, as the crew gathers around the lantern-lit deck, you'll hear more tales, of pineapple smuggling, of exotic lands, of lost loves and fleeting fortunes. You'll listen, half in disbelief, half in wonder, because in these stories lies the true heart of the pineapple legend. And who knows? Maybe one day, you'll have your own story to add to the lore. About the sailor who carried a pineapple not just to impress, but to remind himself that even in the most boring, salt-crusted moments, a little bit of sweetness can change everything. The wind has shifted, carrying with it a faint, unfamiliar scent, something tropical, sweet, and strangely comforting. You lean against the ship's railing, watching the waves break into white foam, and your thoughts turn inward, circling around the curious phenomenon of pineapple hospitality. There's something almost ritualistic about it. When a sailor brought a pineapple to port, it was more than just a gift, it was an invitation. An unspoken promise that you were welcome here, that your presence was a bridge between worlds. In the grand estates and humble inns of the 19th century, a pineapple placed at the center of the table was a symbol of welcome and generosity. But the true story is a little messier, a bit less polished. Not everyone who carried pineapples was invited to join polite society. You remember the tale of a young sailor who tried to smuggle a pineapple into a royal banquet disguised as a fancy cheese. It didn't end well. The royal guards weren't impressed by his ingenuity, and the poor lad was promptly shown the door. Turns out, pineapples might open some doors, but they could slam others. Historians still argue whether pineapple hospitality was genuinely inclusive or a performative gesture designed to reinforce class distinctions. Was it a true symbol of warmth, or a gilded mask to hide society's sharp edges? You suspect it was a bit of both. Regardless, the pineapple's presence at any gathering commanded attention. It was a centerpiece not just in the literal sense, but culturally, a fruit that spoke volumes without saying a word. And you, standing here now, are part of that story. You think about how the pineapple's prickly exterior contrasts with its sweet, juicy heart. Much like the sailors themselves, gruff and salty on the outside, yet yearning for connection and acceptance beneath the rough skin. On board, there's talk of a new tradition brewing, something the younger crew members call the pineapple toast. After a long day of hauling ropes and battling waves, someone produces a pineapple, and the whole ship gathers to raise a glass in its honor. It's silly, maybe a bit childish, but also deeply comforting. You wonder if future historians will look back on these small acts and see the significance you do, or if it will all be forgotten, buried beneath layers of dust and time. For now, though, you savor the moment. The camaraderie, the laughter, the shared understanding that no matter how far you roam, there's a strange magic in this simple fruit. It's a magic born from the unexpected places, the cramped quarters of a ship, the bustling markets of colonial ports, the whispered stories in dimly lit taverns. Tonight, as the ship rocks gently under the moonlight, you trace your fingers over the rough surface of your own pineapple. It's been with you through storms and still nights, through doubt and delight. And in that moment, you realize, carrying a pineapple wasn't just about impressing ladies or flaunting wealth. It was about carrying hope. Hope that even the most ordinary sailor could find a slice of sweetness in a world that often felt harsh and unyielding. Hope that the fruit's exotic allure might translate into something more, connection, respect, a moment of joy. And perhaps, just perhaps, hope that the pineapple's story was still being written. The days at sea blur into one another, and you find yourself thinking less about the fruit's novelty and more about its curious role as a social equalizer. At every port, you notice how pineapples ripple through the local scenes, sometimes as prized trophies, sometimes as subtle acts of rebellion. One evening in a bustling Caribbean harbor, you watch a group of dockworkers gather around a crate of pineapples. These men, rough and calloused from hard labor, pass the fruit around with reverence, like it holds some secret power. One elder among them carefully carves a pineapple's crown into a tiny figurine, a delicate act of artistry in a place so far removed from high society's gilded halls. Historians still argue whether this pineapple appreciation among the working classes was an independent cultural phenomenon or simply a borrowed trend twisted by local traditions. You're inclined to believe it's a mix, a unique fusion that made the pineapple something new, something different. You overhear a merchant's wife complaining about how these pineapples have become a status symbol for those who have no claim to status. It's madness, she huffs. A fruit shouldn't carry more weight than a person's name. But the irony is thick. The pineapple has weight, all right, not in pounds, but in meaning. In many ways, it challenges the rigid social order. It allows those without titles or land to carry a piece of the exotic, the luxurious, even if only for a fleeting moment. Back aboard your ship, the pineapple's presence lingers in unexpected ways. It's a topic of conversation, a prompt for jokes, and occasionally, a point of contention. The carpenter swears that a pineapple charm saved his life during the last storm. The cook insists it adds a subtle sweetness to the rum ration. The captain, ever the pragmatist, grumbles about the extra cargo space taken up by that blasted fruit. And yet, despite all this fuss, no one truly understands why the pineapple has become so central to life at sea. It's almost as if the fruit has taken on a life of its own, an icon, a talisman, a paradox wrapped in spiny skin. You start to notice subtle changes in your own behavior, too. The way you carry yourself when you have a pineapple nearby, prouder, lighter, somehow more visible. It's strange, isn't it? How an object so simple, so oddly specific, can alter the way you move through the world. The pineapple becomes a silent companion during long watches under starlit skies, a reminder that beneath the endless expanse of sea and sky, there are connections that transcend distance and hardship. You think of the lonely ladies in port towns, the curious children peeking through market stalls, the wary merchants counting their coins. All drawn into the pineapple's orbit. And you wonder if, somewhere along the way, the pineapple stopped being just a fruit and started becoming a symbol of possibility. Of daring to be different. Of reaching for a taste of something sweeter, even when the world insists on salt and grit. In the quiet moments before dawn, you tuck a small slice of pineapple into your coat pocket. Not for show, not for barter, but as a reminder. A reminder that even in the dullest, most grueling stretches of life, there's room for a bit of sweetness. A bit of hope. And maybe that's the real reason sailors carried pineapples. Not just to impress the ladies, but to remind themselves that the world is bigger, richer, and more surprising than it often seems. Night falls again, casting long shadows across the deck, and you find yourself alone with your thoughts and the lingering scent of pineapple. There's a quiet magic in these moments, a stillness that lets you reflect on the curious journey of this spiky fruit. You recall the elaborate pineapple carvings you saw in wealthy households, intricate centerpieces, almost like sculptures, made from the fruit's tough skin and sweet flesh. These were more than decorations, they were declarations of status, a way to say, I have traveled, I have tasted, I have conquered. But there's also a less polished side to the pineapple story, one that involves hard labor and exploitation. You've read about the harsh conditions endured by plantation workers who cultivated pineapples in tropical colonies. Sweat and blood under the scorching sun, all so that the fruit could make its way to distant shores. Historians still argue about how to reconcile the pineapple's image as a symbol of hospitality with its darker colonial legacy. Was it a fruit that united people, or one that deepened divides? The truth probably lies somewhere in the tangled middle. You think about the sailors who carried pineapples, not just as luxury items but as burdens. The weight of maintaining appearances, of living up to the expectations the fruit represented. A pineapple wasn't just a pineapple, it was a promise to the crew, to the captain, to the people waiting back home. There's an old sailor's tale that comes to mind, about a captain who lost his ship but saved a single crate of pineapples. To him, that crate was a symbol of survival, of hope amidst ruin. He carried it through hardship like a treasure more precious than gold. The pineapple's prickly exterior also mirrors the roughness of life at sea. Sailors could be gruff, harsh, and stubborn, yet beneath that tough exterior, there was sweetness, camaraderie, and longing. You realize that the pineapple's allure wasn't just in its rarity or taste but in the stories it told, the journeys it survived, the hands it passed through, the moments it brightened. And maybe that's why, even now, after all these years, the pineapple continues to captivate. It's not just a fruit, it's a storyteller, a cultural ambassador, a symbol of resilience and connection. As you look up at the stars, You imagine the countless sailors before you who carried pineapples for reasons lost to time but felt deeply in their hearts. They weren't just trying to impress, they were trying to remind themselves, and others, that even in the vast loneliness of the sea, there is sweetness, hospitality, and hope. You tuck the pineapple away for the night, knowing it will be there when you wake, a quiet companion on the endless waves. And as sleep pulls you under, you carry with you the curious, prickly legacy of the pineapple. The horizon shimmers faintly as dawn creeps in, painting the sky with pastel hues that soften the edges of the world. You're awake before most of the crew, feeling a gentle calm settle over you. The pineapple, nestled safely in the corner of the cabin, seems to hold a quiet energy, as if it's waiting for you to understand its deeper significance. You think about the practical challenges of keeping a pineapple fresh on a long voyage. Unlike hardtack or salted meat, it couldn't simply be stored away indefinitely. Its spiny skin might protect it from the worst of the elements, but the fruit inside was delicate and perishable. Sailors had to learn how to preserve, slice, and savor it before it spoiled, a reminder that even something rare and precious has a limited time to shine. You remember the old ship's cook boasting about his pineapple preserves recipe, blending the fruit with local spices to create a sweet treat that lifted everyone's spirits. It was the kind of recipe passed down in whispers, guarded jealously because a good pineapple preserve was a luxury no sailor wanted to share too freely. Historians still argue whether pineapple consumption at sea was widespread or mostly confined to officers and wealthier passengers. The crew might have only caught fleeting tastes, with the rest left to their imaginations and dreams. And those dreams were often the most potent part of the pineapple story. It symbolized exotic lands far away, places where colors were brighter, smells richer, and possibilities endless. You think about how sailors, isolated by vast oceans, might clutch a pineapple as a lifeline to those distant dreams, as a way to hold on to something beautiful amid the monotony of endless water. The pineapple also played a role in courtship rituals aboard ship. Men would present pineapples to women in port towns not just as a display of wealth but as a gesture of genuine affection, albeit wrapped in the complexities of social expectations. There's a story you've heard, about a sailor who carved a pineapple into a delicate ring for his beloved before setting sail. It was a bold, somewhat ridiculous gift, but one that captured the imagination. The ring, carved from pineapple skin, was a symbol of both fragility and enduring love. Of course, some dismissed these tokens as mere showmanship, little more than sailors' attempts to mask loneliness with extravagance. You chuckle softly, imagining the reaction of a pragmatic shipmate who, after a long day battling the waves, would scoff at the idea of pineapple rings and courtship theatrics. Still, the pineapple's cultural journey is far from straightforward. It's a symbol wrapped in contradictions, luxury and labor, hope and hardship, appearance and reality. As the ship's bell tolls for morning, you prepare to join the others. You carry the pineapple with a newfound respect, not just as a fruit, but as a repository of countless stories. Stories of sailors and dreamers, lovers and fighters, all bound together by this prickly little fruit. And as the day begins, you feel that, no matter where the sea takes you, the pineapple's story is far from over. The ship creaks softly beneath your feet as twilight descends once again, the colors of the sky melting into deep blues and purples. You sit quietly, the pineapple resting beside you, its rough skin cool against the fading warmth of the day. It's hard to believe how much this fruit has come to mean, how it has quietly threaded itself through the fabric of life at sea and beyond. You recall the grand receptions in port cities where captains would proudly display their pineapples as trophies of their voyages, emblems of success and adventure. These were moments when the exotic fruit became a conversation starter, a social lubricant smoothing interactions between strangers from distant lands. But there's another side to this story, less gilded but no less important. The pineapple trade fueled economies but also exploitation, the backbreaking labor of colonial plantations, the politics of global commerce, the tangled histories of empire and resistance. Historians still argue whether the pineapple's legacy should be celebrated purely as a symbol of hospitality or also reckoned with as a reminder of the cost of colonialism. It's a debate without easy answers, much like the sea itself, beautiful and brutal, generous and indifferent. You think about how sailors carried pineapples not just to impress or to trade but as a form of storytelling. The fruit was a living memory, a portable piece of faraway places, a symbol of the dreams and dangers that defined their lives. In quiet moments below deck, you imagine the countless sailors who held a pineapple close, each with their own story of longing, hope, and survival. And you realize that the pineapple's true power lies in its contradictions, its spiky exterior and sweet core, its role as both luxury and labor, its ability to connect and to divide. As you prepare for sleep, the pineapple sits beside you like a loyal companion, a reminder that even the most mundane objects can carry rich, complex histories. You close your eyes and listen to the gentle rocking of the ship, the distant call of seabirds, and the soft rustling of sails. And you know that the story of the pineapple, and the sailors who carried it, will continue to ripple through time, like the endless waves beneath your feet. It's a story of resilience, of curiosity, and above all, of the small moments of sweetness that make the journey worthwhile. Wind down. Now, as your eyelids grow heavier and the world begins to soften at the edges, let the quiet rhythm of the sea lull you deeper into rest. Imagine the gentle sway of the ship beneath you, the faint scent of pineapples mingling with salt and sea breeze, a tender reminder of far-off places and the stories they hold. There's comfort in knowing that even the smallest things, a piece of fruit, a shared smile, a whispered tale, can carry us through the vast, unknown stretches of life. As the night deepens, allow yourself to drift on the waves of history, carried softly by the voices of those who came before. No need to rush, no need to worry. The pineapple's story, like yours, unfolds in its own time, full of unexpected twists and quiet moments of joy. So breathe deeply, sink into the calm, and let sleep take you on its gentle voyage. Sweet dreams.